When the initial spoilers for Secrets of Strixhaven first started dropping, many players, myself included, had their jaws drop when they saw the new dragons. That's right, 5 new versions of the headliner dragons for each of the different magic schools, with each of them giving powerful keywords to your instants and sorceries. Silverquill gives them Casualty, Witherbloom gives them Creature Affinity, Quandrix gives them Cascade, Prismari gives them Storm, and Lorehold gives them Miracle for 2. They're each so strong and have such fun build-arounds. So like many Magic players, I was stuck contemplating which one I'd choose to build. Well, what if I told you, you didn't have to choose? For you see, the deck I've prepared for you today, my dear audience, runs not just one Strixhaven dragon, not just 2, but all 5 of these scaly Strixhaven scholars in one chaotic masterpiece of a deck! And I didn't simply toss them into the 99. Each and every one of these dragons serves as a powerful subcommander within this strategy, and with each of them buffing our instants and sorceries, I put together a vision of scaly spell-slinging like you've never seen before. And thus, I sat down and started brewing. Hi, I'm Jacob, and this is Deep Dive MTG, and welcome to my Strixhaven Scholarship Deck Tech. In this video, I'll be showing you one of the most versatile and fun decks that I've ever built. We'll be going through the majority of tools this deck has access to, including ramp, removal, card draw, etc. We'll cover our overall game plan as well as a few niche interactions or synergies along the way. And of course, by the end of all of it, we'll do a few test hands as well. So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be a fully fledged graduate of Strixhaven University, with full marks from all of your reptilian professors, of course. And as a bonus, maybe you'll see why I've been obsessed with this deck for the past month. Alright then, on to the deck list. Now you might be asking yourself, what commander could possibly synergize with all 5 of these 2-color menaces? Well, look no further than the OG Dragon Professor himself, Niv Mizzet. No, not that one. Or that one. Or that one. How many Niv Mizzets are there? Alright, all these other cards aside, the real Niv Mizzet that we're using as the glue for our 5 commander collage is none other than Niv Mizzet Reborn. With his ETB, we can not only grab any number of the 5 possible commanders off the top of the deck, but we can also use his ETB to grab a few extra 2-color cards off the top of the library as well. So, in order to best take advantage of that, we'll want to run as many 2-color targets as possible, along with a few good blink engines to repeat our commander's ETB. So to give you a general idea, the main goal of this deck is to sling a lot of 2-color instants and sorceries, buffing them up with whatever Strixhaven dragon we happen to draw, accrue some extra value with blinking our commander alongside any other creatures we have with repeatable ETB effects, and eventually win the game with a large multicolor spell to close it out. Okay, so now that we've established the goals of our deck, let's talk about our ratio of spells. Given the second goal on our list, it's no surprise this deck runs a total of 33 instants and sorceries with only one monocolor target in that whole list. Cough cough Mythic's Mastery. Now that large suite of 33 cards houses the majority of our interaction, board wipes, card selection, and win cons. So let's go through most of them real quick. Starting with the card selection spells to find whatever piece we're missing at a given point, we have a few 2-mana spells like Expressive Iteration, Pillage the Bog, and Planar Genesis. We also have a pair of large card advantage spells like Lessons from Life and Escape to the Wilds. We don't run too many cards that go purely positive on card advantage, mostly because our commander does plenty of that already. While I'm at it, let's also clarify a few of those synergistic tutors that I mentioned before. The 2 cards I was thinking of were Waterlogged Teachings and Bring to Light. Waterlogged Teachings is the Dimir MDFC that can search any instant or card with flash, allowing it to serve as either card selection or a land drop if need be, while Bring to Light is an insanely versatile spell that can serve almost any purpose you need it to. It can cheat out one of your sub-commanders that's lower to the ground, or it could just fetch you a much-needed removal spell right out of the deck. Speaking of removal, oh boy, this deck has a lot of it, and most of that is, once again, in our instant and sorcery pile. As far as targeted removal goes in that pile, we have straightforward spells like Decimate, Assassin's Trophy, Anguished Unmaking, Stub Stomp, D-Spark, Drag to the Roots, and Vindicate. Urtai Resurrected and Hostage Taker fall under this umbrella as well, but are the only instants of removal that are on bodies and not just on instant or sorceries. We run those alongside board wipes like Supreme Verdict, Merciless Eviction, and Mutinous Massacre. That last one also functions as a potential game winner depending on the board state. And of course, we have a couple of counterspells in the mix with Dovin's Veto and the previously mentioned Urtai Resurrected. I also want to establish, while this deck runs 0 game changers, I believe my current build still falls under bracket 3 due to the nature of one of our win cons, but more on that later. We also have access to more situational and niche interaction, like Rakdos Charm, Revitalizing Repast, Go Ninja Go, Expansion Explosion, and Response and Resurgence. Go Ninja Go can be used to both flicker your commander for card advantage and remove a troublesome creature, or if you have a card like Hostage Taker or Urtai on board, it can serve as double removal instead for just 2 mana. And let's not forget about those versatile split cards we mentioned. The larger sides of these 2 split cards can also serve as win cons cons if you have either a surplus of mana or a large enough board, with Explosion allowing you to draw a bunch of cards and possibly ping someone out of the game, and Resurgence pairs well with a few cards that really benefit from double combats. Alongside those two though, you have other big mana payoffs such as the previously mentioned Mizzix Mastery, Debt to the Debtless, Dream Harvest, Fourth Eorlingus, and Revival and Revenge. We also can't bring up win cons without discussing the meanest card in this entire deck, that card being Stitch in Time. On its surface, this card is just a 50-50 shot between taking an extra turn or just doing nothing for 3 mana.
Go gambling!
But our deck has so many ways to copy the spell while it's on the stack, so much so that if you end up casting Stitch in Time, odds are you're gonna have a way to flip at least 2 coins. Whether that be through Prismari giving it Storm, Silverquill copying it with Casualty, or you can copy it with the newly unbanned Lutri, along with the expansion side of the previously mentioned Expansion Explosion. Remember how I said this deck technically falls under a bracket 3 despite not running any game changers? Well, yeah, your potential to chain together extra turns is exactly the reason why I said that. Regardless though, even without the extra turn spell, resolving any of those instant and sorcery payoffs with the Strixhaven Dragon on board puts you incredibly far ahead. But this deck's sub-commanders don't just stop at the 5 Strixhaven Dragons. Aside from our scaly Strixhaven Janitor that we'll cover in a bit, we've also included Lila Undefeated Slickshot and General Ferris Roderick. Both of these significantly benefit from you casting a bunch of multicolor instants and sorceries, and in Lila's case, she's basically allowing you to recast them again for free on the following turn by plotting them upon resolution, while Roderick gives you a chunky 4/4 token for each one that you cast. Those tokens can either be used to swing out for lethal or as enablers for Witherbloom and Silverquill, each of whom heavily benefit from having a large number of disposable creatures. Speaking of Witherbloom and Silverquill, it's actually due to those two that the large portion of our mana ramp package also comes in the form of mana dorks. Those dorks including Birds of Paradise, Bloom Tender, Deathrite Shaman, Fabor Elder, Ornithopter of Paradise, Lotho Corrupt Sheriff, Ruby Daring Tracker, Spider Manifestation, and Studious First Year. While most of these function as they would in any other deck as generic good mana fixing dorks, there are 3 notable exceptions. One is the obvious interaction where Bloom Tender and Fabor Elder are both able to tap for a whopping 5 mana the turn your commander comes down, and the fact that Spider Manifestation can often refund you plenty of amounts of mana over the course of a game. Especially if you overload a Mizzix Mastery we previously mentioned, since each spell you target with this is counted as being cast, so each of those instant or sorceries that's 4 mana or higher would untap Spider Manifestation, so you can float the mana between each trigger. Speaking of ramp, you might also be asking yourself why I don't run the 2 Izzet instant and sorcery reducers, and that's because a good amount of our instant and sorceries don't have generic mana costs to reduce. So in their place, I run Widespread Thieving. Yes, it's not a card that I can grab off of Niv's trigger, but making a treasure every time we cast any multicolored spell is more than enough upside to ignore that drawback. Keep in mind, that's not limited to instants and sorceries, just any multicolored spell, meaning that this enchantment will trigger to make a treasure token for a whopping
83% of our spells.
And that's not even accounting for the Hideaway ability, which you can use to stash away one of those previously mentioned big mana win cons, so long as it's not an X spell. Next in our ramp package, we also run a few stable mana rocks. Aside from the typical Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Felwar Stone, we also have a Bender's Water Skin in there, which not only provides good mana fixing, but also synergizes with Lorehold's effect by making the Miracle effectively only cost 1 mana, since it'll untap with each opponent's upkeep. But if you're looking for more explosive ramp within this deck, then we have 3 main options. One of which is a card that I consider to be our honorary Strixhaven Dragon, who I previously referred to as the beloved janitor of our magical campus, Klauth, Unrivaled Ancient. This is a 7 mana 4/4 Gruul Dragon with flying and haste, and he says whenever Klauth Unrivaled Ancient attacks, you add X mana in any combination of colors where X is the total power of attacking creatures. You spend this mana only to cast spells, and until the end of turn, you don't lose mana as steps and phases end. Now the reason I refer to Klauth as the janitor of this college is because my man cleans up. Every time this absolute unit hits the board, he'll either net you enough mana to win the game then and there, or put you in such a dominant position that your opponents have 1 rotation to take you out before it's curtains. To put this into perspective, if you manage to stick this creature while your commander's on board, you're making at minimum 10 mana the same turn, going positive by 3 since he costs 7 to cast, while also putting a giant hate bear on the field to eat a piece of removal. And in many other situations when your board is even bigger, or if you somehow manage to set up the extra combat spell before you go to your first one, then this card is just a guaranteed win. Due to all of this, Klauth cements his spot in this deck as an absolute MVP, and he earns his spot as this deck's honorary honorary 6th Strixhaven Dragon. Now, as for our other two big hitter ramp targets, we have classic like Mirari's Wake and its newer sibling, Resonating Loot. Both of them are overperformers in this deck, but Resonating Loot is especially useful since it can come down turn 4 right before your commander does. Not to mention with how often your commander is absolutely filling your hand, it's very easy to fulfill the requirement of getting 7 or more cards in your hand to tap Resonating Loot to draw a card. Okay, let's move on to our Blink package. As I mentioned earlier in the video, running a few Blink enablers allows us to repeat our commander's extremely powerful ETB effect. The 3 repeatable Blink enablers we have are Brago King Eternal, Kaikar Zephyr Awakened, and Soul Herder. We also have one-off Blink spells like Turn to Mist and the previously mentioned Go Ninja Go, but those speak for themselves. Now I know 3 Blink enablers doesn't seem like a lot in a 100-card deck, but it's important to keep in mind how much card advantage our commander nets us. Out of the many times I've played this deck, I can't remember a game where I didn't at least have the chance to cast one of these creatures. Brago specifically is insanely strong since he, again, like Resonating Loot, comes out on turn 4, then on turn 5, you cast your commander, and then are able to repeat his ETB effect when Brago deals combat damage. Not only that, but Brago can also blink any mana rocks we have to untap them. And as a neat little synergy, he can also do this with Ruby Daring Tracker since she has haste. My man Kaikar is also no slouch when it comes to this deck. Not only is his blink effect perfectly suited for a Spellslinger deck, but he can also generate us plenty of 1/1 tokens for our Witherbloom and Silverquill. And Soul Herder is just plain good value for 3 mana. Now, onto our supplemental blink targets. If your commander's been removed or you just simply haven't casted him yet, here are the other creatures that you could use those blink triggers for. Some we mentioned earlier in the video, like Urtai Resurrected and Hostage Taker, along with Ruby Daring Tracker or Studious First Year in order to re-prepare it. But one I have yet to mention is Carter Doomscourge. Carter Doomscourge is a classic blink target that can not only serve to leave your opponents without blockers, but utilize their big creatures to whittle down each other's life totals over the course of a game. Some other blink targets that I haven't mentioned yet are cards like Baleful Strix, Dragonologist, and Kirill Attentive First Year. Baleful Strix and Dragonologist both provide extra card advantage every time they re-enter, but Dragonologist specifically adds extra protection by giving our big dragons hexproof when they're untapped. Not to mention, its specific focus on instant sorceries and dragons in its ETB effect makes it specifically built for this very deck. Now, Kirill is a newer card from Lorwyn Eclipsed that I think is insanely underrated and underutilized by the majority of Commander players. This guy is basically a 3-mana Strionic Resonator that you don't need to pay mana into in order to activate. In this deck, he lets your commander double trigger the turn he comes down since you can tap himself and the commander to double the ability. And if you manage to blink him, it resets the once per turn restriction on his ability, since this is a new instance of Kirill. Plus, his copying is not limited only to your commander. You can also copy Cascade triggers off of Quandrix, Storm triggers off of Prismari, Casualty triggers off of Silverquill, and Blink triggers off of Soul Herder. Hell, I've even copied Klaus Mana Generation trigger, since technically it's not a mana ability, which helps us set up even more for those big mana wins we talked about previously. Okay, now that we've covered most of the spells on the deck that I wanted to talk about, let's get into the land base. For the most part, we don't have too many utility lands, since in 5 color, you want to just prioritize making sure that you get all of the colors you need to at a given time. But in place of the large amount of utility lands that I'd normally run, I have a lot of the 2-color MDFCs. Not only are a lot of them just generally playable in most decks, but in the case of this deck, it allows Niv's Trigger to net us land drops as well. Alright, that about wraps up the deck list portion of the video. Next, let's break down how this deck is actually played most of the time. Now, the most fair aspect of our deck is that all the cards we get off of Niv's ETB are public knowledge, meaning there is very little bluffing or politicking you can do with this deck. If you just grabbed a debt to the debt list and have a mana doubler on board, you will unavoidably be identified as the primary must-kill target. In a similar situation, publicly adding a counterspell to my hand versus secretly sitting on one completely changes the dynamic. So how do you play around this without just hoping your friends forget public knowledge? Well, there's a few things you can do. Now, the simple and most obvious solution is to hold up interaction to protect yourself, but for the sake of argument, let's say that ship has sailed. Well, in some cases, you can actually use public knowledge in your favor. Suddenly, that public removal or counterspell is 100% a credible threat that if anyone sends too much damage or interaction your direction, you can and will make them regret it. There is also one very important habit you need to develop in order to pilot this deck well. That being, whenever you know you're going to blink your commander on your end step, make sure you hold up at least 2 to 4 mana if possible. I've had too many games where on my end step I blink my commander, and his trigger grabs me a big spell that'll allow me to win on my next turn. Not only that, it grabbed me a good amount of interaction in order to protect myself, but I held up 0 mana, meaning that all of these useful spells that could allow me to get to that next turn are completely useless, and I get pummeled and taken out before I'm ever allowed allowed to untap with all of those threatening cards. Don't be like me. If you're gonna blink on end step, keep a few mana up. However, if they don't pummel you and you are able to untap, this deck can win in many different ways. You can copy or reduce a big X spell to drain the table or make a ton of 2/2s. You can catch a table slacking with a well-timed Mutinous Massacre, give Casualty or Storm to a spell that gives you extra turns or extra combats. Hell, I've even taken people out with commander damage via those extra combats with cards like Legion Leadership and Strength of the Harvest. Alright, we've covered the general playstyle. Let's talk about what your first few turns will realistically look like. Ideally, you want to keep a hand with at least 3 lands and some sort of ramp, but even if you don't see any ramp, any of our 3 main blink engines are honestly a good enough reason to keep most hands. On turn 1, you'll probably either play a tapped land, or if you're lucky, you'll drop down a bird or a bear. Turns 2 and 3, you'll either play a ramp spell or drop one of your ETB value creatures, or if you're fortunate enough to see them, you can set up with either Lila or Roderick. On turn 4, if you've ramped, you'll normally just drop your commander and then go to discards, but if you haven't ramped yet, then the best cards are either Resonating Loot or Brago King Eternal. In Brago's case, you may still want to cast him even if you did ramp. On turn 5, the only time you don't just cast Niv is if you have a card like Mirari's Wake in hand or one of the Strixhaven Dragons that you'd like to set up more. Although when it comes to those Strixhaven Dragons, the only one I'd recommend tapping out to cast is Quandrix, since his inbuilt Cascade trigger at least gives you some value the second you pay for his cost. As for the rest of them, even if you have the mana to get them out, most players will just remove them before you get to untap with them. Turn 6, you'll likely have enough mana to toss out a few good interaction spells or one of your splashy or big spells to throw yourself into the lead. And from turn 7 onwards, you're looking for a way to close out the game with any of the win conditions we previously mentioned, whether that be by using Witherbloom to discount a big X spell, using Prismari to give Storm to Stitch in Time, using Silverquill to copy an extra combat spell, or by using Quandrix and Lorehold to bury your opponents in so much value they simply can't recover. Alright, if you made it this far, please consider subscribing to help contribute to Gordita's Treat Fund. Her hunger is ceaseless. The woes of my chunky child aside, I think that about wraps up our discussion portion of the deck tech. But before we bring this lecture to a close, let's review some practical applications with a few test hands. Hey guys, non-JPEG Jake here with a crappier mic. So I have the whole deck list on Moxfield. Now, okay, so here's the rub when it comes to this one. I like the Planar Genesis, love the Baleful Strix, love the Rakdos Charm, and the Silverquill. Everything here looks great, but the Great Hall of the Citadel is our only potential access to blue, and this only works with legendary spells, which is normally intended for our commander, but for the other cards, this is so great. This is one of the cards I intended to cut once I have a higher budget. But again, the land base, don't focus too much on that. Whatever you have access to, I would say run that. If you have better cards that you can toss in there, by all means do that. When it comes to the land bases, unless it's specifically interacting with the deck or there's just a few specific utility lands that I think stand out, I don't normally harp on them too much. But this is another mobile, so I guess in this case we'd be going to 6. This I would definitely keep. I would probably mull away the Rush of Inspiration. Right? No, I kind of need that land drop. Okay. If I'm being smart, I mull away the Widespread Thieving, but I love Widespread Thieving. I love it so much. So if I'm being stupid, I am mulling away the Vindicate, because we have a lot of removal in this deck, so I might just end up getting it. So we're gonna move that to the bottom of the library, and then we're gonna see what our draw of return is. And you doubted me. Ah, you love to see it. You would start with the Mana Confluence into the Bop. We would go to the next turn, play a Skycloud Expanse, Tapping for 3 for the Widespread Thieving, and Hideaway 5. 3, 4, 5. Ooh. So the thing about this Hideaway is it's not like a typical Hideaway land where you can kind of sit on it, similar to like Bridgeworks Battle. It is contingent on you casting a spell. Because normally under Hideaways, I put counter spells if I can, because when you have a Hideaway land like Bridgeworks Battle, it normally means you're in a winning position, so putting a counter spell is really good. But in this case, I'd probably just put Lila underneath there, because Lila's like one of the best cards in this deck. So yeah, we'll put Lila underneath there. We will send these all to the bottom. And hello? Hello? Okay. All right. That's our next turn. We would have drawn Vohar. We would have played this Rush of Inspiration on its backside for the land. And then we got 3 mana this turn. Probably just gonna... I have to use the Mana Confluence. Because this is a filter land. So, we would take another damage, probably down to 37 at this point. We cast a Vohar, make a treasure. We go to the next turn. Okay, so in this case, we would not be able to get to our commander, but we do have access to some good removal, and some good ramp, as well as Vohar to keep digging. That's pretty good. Now, we'd have a treasure in this case, so we'd have access to 5 mana this turn. So, I think our strategy would just be to keep tossing out removal spells and keep generating treasures to maybe cast Dream Harvest on the next turn. And then we would probably just discard one of the removal spells, the Drag to the Roots in this case, because there's no setup there. We'd go to the next turn, which we'd draw Great Hall of the Citadel and be able to cast our commander. So yeah. Alright, we'll go to the next hand. This is absolutely keepable. We'd probably crack the Bloodstained Mire for... We have a Zeotoras in hand. So you know what? We would not crack the Bloodstained Mire. We would play the Zeotoras first. We would let that come in tapped over first we draw off turn. Alright. Then, we would draw... Oh, well, that makes this easier. Let's skip the... Normally, I would send the Bloodstained Mire and just use it, but let's... Actually, no, I should probably save it for a potential Surveil. I would tap 2, either Arcane Signet or Fellwar Stone. Most of the time, Arcane Signet just because it's better. Tap the Arcane Signet for Deathrite Shaman. And then, we can go to the next turn, crack one of these 2 fetches. We have a land engraved for the Deathrite Shaman, and now we can cast a commander. It's just that easy, folks. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, I will say, because you're casting your commander, you already have 5 in hand, you're definitely going to be discarding the hand size. That's not always a bad thing. You could set up a Myzic's Mastery on a later turn, but because we don't see it in the opener, there are some times where, in this case, instead of doing that, I would cast the Fellwar Stone, and especially because we have 2 fetches here, I would probably actually end up doing this, and I would tap 4 and cast the Lessons from Life, which would net us 1, 2, 3, and I'd play the Fellwar Stone, or I'd play the Windswept Heath tapped off of the Lessons from Life, and then I'd go to the next turn. Great Hall of the Citadel, you love to see it. Cast Commander, and then maybe also cast Bloom Tender. And just to show you, you know what? Yeah, just to show you how much you can get from casting your commander, we just hit the Windswept Heath with that. So we have 3 mana left after this. We would cast my commander. Let's take a look at what an actual Niv trigger looks like. 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so just off this one trigger, and I would say this is a mid Niv Mizzet trigger. We got General Roderick for our Boros. We have Lila for our Izzet. Mirari's Wake for our Selesnya. Urtai for our Dimir. And Stub Stomp for our Gruul. That is 5 cards. 5 cards for 5 mana and a 6/6 flying body that we're able to blink. Like, you could see where this deck can get out of hand. And then on the next turn, once we send all these to the bottom, okay, let me move these over here. There we go. So all of these go to hand. Now, I will say, I would then have to discard a hand size, but I can also play this Stub Stomp tapped. Although, I don't actually have a lot of No, we want Legion Leadership and Clouth are a really great combination. So I would play the Stub Stomp tapped for land for turn, and then I would probably tap these two for a Bloom Tender, and then I crack Wingswept Teeth to get a Triome, because getting the Bloom Tender here is extremely important, because again, this taps for 5 mana thanks to our commander. So then we'd go to the next turn. Actually, well, first we would have to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'd have had to discard 1 to hand size. 4 Ethereal Links. This is a card that's always been on my, like, it's kind of meh for the deck, but I like the creature generation for Silverquill and Witherbloom, but as more cards come out, this will probably be the first thing I cut. But I immediately here, I tap Bloom Tender, I play a Mirari's Wake, and now all of our lands tap for double. So this would probably be like 2, 4, 6, 8, 1 floating, Clouth. Tap to cast a Lila. In combat with Clouth Trigger on the stack, and swinging with Clouth Commander, not Death Ray Shaman. Cast Legion Leadership, target Commander. Commander is now a 12/6 plus Clouth. That is 16 mana that we're working with. Like, you could see where this goes insane. I cast General Roderick, I cast Dream Harvester, I can play a Plains for turn, and I have enough mana to hold up with Deathrite Shaman plus these 2 lands to hold up Urtai for a counterspell. It is just insane. Not to mention, because of Lila, on the next turn, I'm going to be able to cast both this Dream Harvest and the Legion Leadership if I want to. So, it's just crazy. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Mirari's Wake also gives him +1/+1. So, it goes even nuttier than I thought it did. These are the type of win cons you can see with this deck. Listen, like any deck, it could be susceptible to removal, it could be susceptible to your game plan being interrupted, but I think it's a really fun deck that has a ton of different avenues for you to look for a win, and it just plays different almost every single time that I played this deck. I just love it. Alright, that just about does it for the deck, for the test hand portion of the video. Thank you for watching. Alright, that brings my Strixhaven Scholarship Deck Tech to a close. Congratulations on earning your deep dive degree from our prestigious organization. And I wish you luck in your future academic endeavors. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I'm Jacob, this is Deep Dive MTG, and I hope to see you in the next one. Till then,